remind me when she is attending. Then if she wants to attend or try to join and not able, then I will check if it is. Because Kevin, you already, because I add you already to the member list and you
Yeah.
are attended, isn't it? Easily,
Yes.
without problem. Okay, then
Yes.
Annie is also in the list. I will check if there is any problem with this. Then, if not, then I will start the class. Let me check once more. Okay, okay, I did for her once more. So then I'm going to share the PowerPoints, the files. Today we are going to exercise the Keynesian economics. I will give you some calculations. Before calculating, actually, I will try to give you more comprehensively this theoretical informations about the Keynesian economics, the output expenditure model. And then if we have time, then I will upload the second part of this. Then we will do some calculations online, and you will step by step. I did this for you for being able to understand how it is going to be managed, because it is very helpful for evaluating the GDP and the other components, so-called the consumption, investment, governmental expenditures, export, import, and the impact of the tax to the economy. These are all going to be evaluated with this examples. But first, I will give you a little bit more comprehensive the economical impact and the Keynesian aspect, and then we will go through. Okay, let me share the file. Okay, I think you are able to see this Keynesian model,
Yes.
aggregate demand and economics
Yes.
fluctuations. As I said to you, I will introduce you the Keynesian model today, a little bit more theoretical aspect will introduce to you, and then we go through to the calculations and applications. And the business cycle, when we are looking to the business cycle, you know, in economics, most important parameters which we are, when you are going to evaluate a country's performance, it is enough to look to the GDP and the unemployment and inflation, maybe. You understand, GDP, real GDP, of course, is very important indicator for the performance of the economy or performance of the governments. Therefore, GDP is the one parameter, and the unemployment or employment rate is enough to determine the performance of the economy in just 1 minute. This is how it is. But then you will go through to the other parameters and make some comprehensive, of course, explanation and information. But the most important two parameters you have to look for the evaluation of the economies is the GDP, and the performance of the economy is directly related with the employment also. And the inflation is also, which is affecting and having multiplier effects to the other parameters, is also important to control. You are observing here the GDP between 85 to 2012, and as you are observing, it is increasing in the United States. This is, of course, the books that we are using mostly comes from the United States, and the American literature is mostly dependent in the course books. Therefore, here is also the US economy is in the subject, and when you are observing and looking to this, there are some problems sometimes where these shaded areas and vertical lines is somehow, as you see, it is stagnating and reducing the economical performance of the economy, but it is at the end of the day increasing during this period. It is on the way increased and enlarged the economy. Sometimes some stagnation in the 90s and in the 2000, the millennium, and in the 2010, around 2010, some recession and some economical problems observed. And when you are looking to the similarly, the unemployment, you are having similarities. As I said to you, unemployment increased at this period of time in the 90s, in 2000, and in the 2010 periods. You observe the unemployment rate is heavily increased and enlarged during this period of time. And the inflation rate similarly is becoming very high and stagnating and going up and down and having some structural breaks for the economy. And this is also not good for the economy, where we are having problem with these parameters, and they are stagnating and affecting the whole economy. The contraction and expansion. Contraction means reducing. These somehow the business cycle is becoming less and becomes reduced. And expansion is the economical improvement, development, enlargement. And as you are seeing between these two periods that we are planning and observing, the contraction and expansion is somehow regarding to the is a peak points, and which is increasing and enlarging the economical activities when it is expansion, and when it is contraction, similarly affecting and changing the economy negatively. Sometimes contraction is necessary for maintaining the sustainable economical model, and sometimes expansion or expansionary monetary policies or expansionary economical application is necessary for enlarging and increasing the economical models. This is directly related with the supply and demand effects and the demand capacity of the consumers, whether it is less or more, is then is forced the producer to enlarge and increase when the consumption is high, consumer demand is high, and there is less production. Then we are expecting to enlarge and increase the economical activities. And when there is some surplus which is above the equilibrium from the supply and demand curves, then we are unfortunately expecting some recessionary or contractionary policies for reducing the surplus. Here it is again given this crisis in the 1930s, so-called the very well-known the 1929 recession, which affect the global economical structure and economies. And when you are looking to this period, just only in the United States again, the price level is very heavily increased, around 75%. The unemployment rate is around 25 to 30 somehow. The real standard and poor stock index is around 45%. The real gross domestic production is reduced, as you are observing between this period of time. The consumption, similarly, because of this supply side, is also affects and change the consumption. And when the consumption reduced, you are observing difficulties in the economy. The investment similarly reduced, as you are observing, from 1929 to 1933 in such a short period of time. So strong reduction in the investment is observed from 90 billion, 91 billion to 17 billion. And the real private debt is similarly increased from 88 billion to 102 billion. The non-farm real estate similarly enlarged, and food energy per capita per day is reduced. This is how it is affecting the whole parameters and the whole sectors when there is some recession, when there is some depression in the economy. And the Great Depression is very popular. I don't know if you ever heard and read this. This is the most popular information which is given when you are starting to study economics. The professors like to give you this as an example for showing you the impact of the parameters to the economy. Of course, in the 80s and then later, some other fiscal recession and fiscal crisis observed, some debt crisis observed in 2010, for example, in the European Union. In the 80s, the I don't know this if you know this, in the America, very popular crisis observed in the real estate sector, and most of the well-known firms collapse and affect the whole economy. Therefore, it comes somehow multiplier effect to the whole parameters when such recession realize in the economy. When we are going to the macroeconomic modeling, we are, of course, requiring to exercise some cycle, some economical business cycle, which is affecting and changing the performance of the parameters. And the GDP, which is the amount of the goods and services produced in a year, is heavily affecting the all parameters. And if it is increasing and large, it very clear and very obvious expectation is the capital or the resources or the income is expected to increase and enlarge, because your production operation process generates too much goods and services, and you are selling this to the market, and results of this enlargement in the economy, your capital and income is expected to enlarge and increase, and results of this enlargement, the aggregate demand and spending is then directed to the market again and enlarged, and this is circulation is realized because the households who are holding the factors of production in their hands will then affect and change the economy very heavily if the production operation process from the firms and the producers sufficiently realized. Again, here it is given the output, the production, the generates income to the households, because we are also households or the factors of the production holders are the households. They are holding in their hands their land, their capital, because they are the savers in the economy, and also the labor. They are having the power, the employment capacity for producing some goods and services. And from this point of view, if the firms hiring this from the households, they will then generate some income, and this income will be then again distributed either to the consumption or to the saving, because part of the consumption, which is around 50%, must be saved for being able to create some sustainable economical model. And results of this saving and consumption, this circulation is going in the direction of the clockwise, and this spending will goes again to the firms as a capital, as a resources for maintaining and circulating their economical activities. And when we are coming to the supply and demand, the loanable funds of the economy, suppliers, as you are understanding of this loan, of this capital, is the households. They are holding the small percentage of saving, let's say 1%, 2%, or maximum 10% of their income will be saved in the banking sector, in the financial system. And when this all capital and all these resources, this loanable funds collected from the borrowers, from the savers, sorry, will be directed to the borrowers, will be directed to the entrepreneurs, to the producers, for being able to invest and produce some reasonable goods and services. Here, the market is in the equilibrium. It is supposed to be at 5%. We have the equilibrium position, and we have approximately 140, let's say, $1 billion saved, and is then distributed equally to the market, which is rarely realized. In most cases, the save percentage interest rate is very low, and the borrower's percentage is usually very high. You are borrowing very high from the banking sector, but you are saving with very low percentages. And this is the mostly reason why the amount of the saving capital not increasing such let's say faster, or such slowly, where there is a less capital or less saving. Then it is because of the interest rate is not very high, or the people's desire or people's capability is not very well. as you are knowing, especially in the emerging economies, people are not able to save because they are getting very small income salaries, and with these salaries they are only survive. They are not able to save. They are not able to put some money to the banking sector because they can manage to catch up the end of the month because of these small salaries and wages. And when we are reducing the, let's say, interest rate, what is happening? As you see, the reduced interest rate is affecting the supply of loanable funds and shifted the demand, so-called the borrowing capacity, to the lower level either. And results of this reduction, the amount is reduced from 140 to 60, and because of this reduction in the interest rate from 5 to 3%, this is happened. Therefore, interest rate is expected to be given to the savers at a reasonable level for being able to maintain economical model and sustainable saving and investment to the economy. Otherwise, you are always exercising some deficit problem, or you are always knocking the door to the other international institutions such as IMF, International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank, or other institutions for borrowing some capitals, or you will then invite the FDI or FPI investment, the foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment to the economy for being able to enlarge and increase your economical activities, which is also sometimes creating some problems to the economy because of this current account deficit and balance of economy may not sustainable for the domestic producers, or may not able to compete with these international institutions who are in the economy. And these things are also the problems of the economy. And again, when we are looking to the output, this circulation and cycling of the economy, the output again creates some or generates some production and results of this income. And income and consumption again is realized. And as you see, saving capital is directed to the so-called to the market, and this then will create some capacity to enlarge and increase, because when you are having some some saving, sufficient saving, and saving is also equal to the investment, because in the governmental expenditures, we are knowing from the Keynesian economics, saving is the reason for the investment. It is equal to the investment, and if you are having sufficient saving, this will then direct it to the production operation process from the borrowers, from the entrepreneurs, and this will then create some capacity increase to the economy and enlarge and increase the employment. And from this point of view, we are expecting the aggregate demand or aggregate expenditures will then come probably or approach to the output, so-called the expected or planned real GDP, and this is then good for the economy. This is creating some positive impact to the economy, because you are having sufficient capital for performing and enlarging the economy. The Keynesian model, when we are looking at the Keynesian, as you know, the Keynesian, the y is equal to c plus I plus g plus nx. C is the government, c is the consumption, I is the investment, g is the governmental expenditures, and nx is the export minus import. And these parameters is the Keynesian expenditure output model. And here we are having these parameters. Y is equal to c plus I plus, of course we don't have here all, but some partly is given here. The consumption equation is given, and the part of this is also given for the disposable income. And C, when you are looking, this is as simple as a table and estimations. Y is equal to C, which is the autonomous consumption, which everybody whether you are working or not working, need or have some capital for surviving. Therefore, autonomous capital is the C plus O point, let's say, 8y. Here is the consumption equation. When we're going to rewrite this, C is then consumption equation is going to be equal to the consumption, which is the autonomous, so-called intercept, is $20 or 20 euro plus 0.8y. This is the consumption equation as it is given in the fourth equation for the column. And 0.8 here is the marginal propensity of the consumption, so-called the percentage of the consumption, which is supposed to be from disposable income or consumed. And the rest of this is the saving. And if you know from the former classes that we have exercised, this marginal propensity of consumption and marginal propensity of saving must equal to 1. And if it is estimated as 0.8, this has meant then we have some 0.20%, which is very good to save in the economy. And when we are coming to the columns, in the first column, the income is given. In the second column, as you see, the income is 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. It goes like this. The autonomous consumption, I said, it is always constant as it is given from the consumption equation on the fourth column. And if you don't understand anything, you may ask me. And the third column, it is the propensity given, the marginal propensity of consumption. You are going to multiply the disposable income, which is 100, with 8, and this will then give you 80. You are going to multiply 200 with the 0.8, and this will then give you 160. 300 multiplied with 0.8, and this will then give you 240. This then creates the consumption, which is the disposable income part of the consumption, or marginal propensity percentage of the consumption, which is supposed to be used in the let's say market. And the consumption equation again is given here is 20 is the disposable, autonomous consumption in the first column, in the second column, and then it goes like this. You are observing this consumption, which is marginal propensity of consumption creates, will be then added with the autonomous consumption. Then this will then gives the total consumption amount, which is the consumption equation, so-called the amount of the total consumption in the economy for the one person. Then will gives you 160 plus 20, 180, 240 plus 20, 260. I'm talking about the third column. 320 plus 20, because the autonomous consumption is going to be added here. Then will gives you, as you are observing, it is increased and enlarged $20, let's say, per each period of time. And then saving here, as I said to you, it is the percentage of this, which is supposed to be 20% or 0.20. And when you are going to take 0.20 of this, then this will then gives you minus 20 probably. And then from 100 is again to y minus c. Here is the propensity is not given. Then you are going to subtract the total income or disposable income from the consumption. Then you are going to subtract the first column from the fourth column for being able to obtain this saving capital. Or you may then use, as I said to you, the percentage of this disposable income for being able to estimate the amount of the saving capital for the economy or for this person. And here, the first column, 200, you're going to subtract it from the fourth column, is going to give you $20 for the saving. And from 300, you're going to subtract this 260, then will give you 40. And then 500 subtracted from 420 will give you 80. It goes like this. But you can use the propensity, which is 0.20 for calculating this saving percentages if the propensity, marginal propensity is given, marginal propensity of saving is given. Here the graphically illustrated, as you are observing here, the original, the dashed line which comes from the origin is the consumption line, which is 55%, and it is equally distributed between the income and consumption. And we unfortunately not always getting this. Our consumption function and consumption equation is not always giving us this opportunity for distributing our income and consumption equally, because as I said to you, the propensity problem is always having a big role in this aspect. Then we are starting from 20. This is the consumption equation, which is the bold line going from C autonomous is 20 started, which is the mass consumed amount, which is not dependent to the income, is 20 starting and goes, as you see, a little bit lower than the expected, or so-called the original income consumption line. And it is unfortunately a little bit below this curve, and it is intersecting this income and consumption at 100. And after you are observing a period of time when it is going to reach the income 400, the consumption amount is going to be differed from the consumption income line, is approximately 60. And this is then, as I said to you, in this 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth or fifth line, it gives you this 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. Yes, fifth line gives you this, which is going to be saving represents. This amount is the saving, because the slope is the propensity here, marginal propensity of consumption. And when we are drawing this graph or this line or linear line, then we are having this consumption function line, and it is below the consumption income line, and approximately $60 or 60, let's say, unit is dependent or gone to the saving, and 340 is then consumed. Therefore, this line is a little bit lower than the consumption income line. And the Keynesian investment function, as you are observing here, is supposed to be a horizontal line. And it is here, as you are observing, the intended investment is given and the income. And the investment is then, since the saving is 60, then investment is automatically is expected to 60. And here then this is illustrated as a horizontal line, which is parallel to the income, and it is not affected from the other parameters. It is directly related to the percentage of the income which is given. And when we are coming to the aggregate demand curve, you are observing here the aggregate demand curve is a little bit above this consumption curve, because demand is then consumption plus investment, which is the aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus NX, isn't it? Then we are having here only the investment also. Then we are adding to this this autonomous income, where it was started from 20, this 60, and draw this parallel line to this consumption, then having this aggregate demand curve. As you are observing, this is only changing or dependent to the saving amount, which increase the consumption plus saving to the 80, and results of this, the aggregate demand curve is drawn. And here we are having again the deriving aggregate demand from the consumption function and the investment, as I said to you, because of this given information and given parameters and the data, we have the disposable income, consumption, intended investment, and the aggregate demand is illustrated on this graph. And as I said to you, income, when the income is 400, the consumption is 340, the investment, which is the saving amount, is 60, and aggregate demand is again dependent to the income, or so-called the disposable income, will become equal at that point. And the aggregate demand with the higher intended investment here is given. As you are observing, we have some little bit more, 140 now, which is not 60, which is exaggerated and increased and enlarged. And as you are observing, since it is 140, then the consumption and investment will be then added together. Summation of the consumption and investment or intended investment will then gives you the aggregate demand. And as you are observing here, we are having at 800 this equilibrium between the disposable income and aggregate demand, so-called the 800, 660 the consumption, and 140 for the investment, which is the total amount of the saving, and aggregate demand will become then equal at that level. And the former example, it was for the 400. And this is again illustrated on the graph. And you are observing here, we are having here 80, which is increased to 160. Then we have the aggregate demand curve for the first is 60. And for aggregate demand curve for the investment, 140 is illustrated here, which is again parallel, but now it is a little bit enlarged and increased to the upper level. If you are having problem with this, then please ask me. If not, then I'm going to, because I am introducing you this. I don't know whether you are having problem with this presentation, because these are the Keynesian simplest model that we are representing and introducing to you. The possibility of the excess inventory accumulation is the income, and the depletion, so-called the consumed or consumption. The income is again given here. The aggregate demand, the excess inventory accumulation is depletion, so 2. And as you see, it is going to be again starts from the -20, goes to 0, and then it's increasing and enlarging until 18. And the intended investment is 60, as you are observing here. The investment here again is the column 3 plus column 4. Then you are going to add this 3 and 4 together. Then this will then 20 minus 20 plus 60 will give you 40. 0 minus 0 plus 60 will give you 60. 20 plus 60 will give you 80. And it goes like this. And for the macroeconomic identity, then y is again c plus I. Then we are going to add the column 3 and column 2 together. As you see, 320 plus minus 20, of course, is going to 300. 400 plus 0 is 400. 480 plus 20, 500. You are observing, isn't it? The column 3 and column 3, column 2 and column 3 will be added, or will be summation. Will sum, and then we are creating or getting this output, so-called the disposable income or aggregate demand, is going to be equally distributed to the economy. And as you see here, in the second column and in the fifth column, all becomes equal here, because it is adjusted, isn't it? You are observing here, there is no differences between the income, but the aggregate demand, when we are adding and managing, only at the 400 is realized, but the aggregate demand is not going to become equal to the output in the other income levels. Then we are going to look again here, the 800, again, the aggregate demand is 720, the depletion or the consumption is 80, the intended investment is 60, and the second part or phase of this investment, which is the saving, is 140. Then when you are going to add this together, then will gives you 800 again. Unintended investment in the Keynesian model is represented here. As you are observing, again, we are having here the output in income line, so-called the aggregate expenditure, and the output becomes equal at 400. The income is equalized with the aggregate demand. And as you see, when the 800 is reached, we have some problem because the investment is a little bit, the 80 let's say unit is reduced and not catch up the similar level as it is in the 400. Therefore, this is coming from this propensities. When the propensity is changed, then you are having also problem with this aggregate demand and income, so-called disposable income. Therefore, only at the 400 is equalized and adjusted and intersect each other. And when we come to the full employment equilibrium with high intended investment, as you are observing here, now the full employment is realized, where the income and the aggregate demand and so-called output is adjusted and intersect each other. And at that level, we suppose the full employment equilibrium is observed. And the Keynesian unemployment, again, when we are looking to the graph here, you see there is some reduction here now because we are moving from aggregate demand 0 to aggregate demand 1, which is reduced to 160 to 180. And as a result of this, some employment reduction or some unemployment observed in the system. The green line indicates this reduction in the economy, and results of this line, which vertically gray line, represents the unemployment rate in the economy. And it is, of course, expected to be full employment, but results of this reduction, some unemployment is realized. And as you are observing in the intersection of the E1, there is an unemployment equilibrium, and after this is happened. When we are going to the output, the production generates some income again. The income goes to households, and it goes like this. The spending and some lower output because of the aggregate demand is less than, the aggregate demand, if it is less than the real GDP, then we have some problem, and this will then lower the output, lower income, and lower spending, and results of this circulation creating some problem to the economy. Therefore, in the economy, this aggregate demand and output, or so-called real GDP, is expected to become equilibrium, or we suppose the equilibrium, and we estimate and calculate the parameters in this direction. And the multiplier is given here, the change in the intended investment, change in the aggregate demand, as it is given C plus COI, sorry, and in output and income is given in the aggregate demand, and the consumption, so-called the differentiation of the consumption and differentiation of the aggregate demand is represented here. The investors lose confidence because it is minus, investment is minus 80, is reduced, and because of this delta or differentiation of the reduction of the investment, producers respond to the reduced demand for their goods by cutting back on production approximately minus 80 unit. Production means less income. With income reduction by 80, households cut consumption because marginal propensity of consumption is also reduced. This is somehow thinking the tax, when the government increase the tax rates, your consumption or your disposable income is becoming less, and this will then cause you some reduction on the consumption. Similarly, this is happened also when the price increase observed in the market, and this also similarly affect and change the economical parameters. And here we are talking about the production and producer science, and because of this reduction in the economy, some reduction in the consumption is also expected because propensity affect and change the consumption. As you observe, it is approximately minus 64 unit, let's say, reduced, because 8 multiplied with minus 80 will give you this minus 64 unit of reduction in the consumption, because the consumption equation, C plus let's say, if the consumption equation C is equal to A plus B y, A is the autonomous consumption and B is the marginal propensity. Here, therefore, here the marginal propensity is 0.8 and the disposable, differentiation or the change in the disposable income is 80. Therefore, 80, when you are going to multiply it with this B, also called the marginal propensity of C, consumption, will give you this reduction in the consumption. And the expenditure output model of the Keynes, sometimes also called the Keynesian cross diagram, determines the equilibrium level of real GDP by the point where the total or aggregate expenditures in the economy are equal to the amount of the output produced. As you are observing here, the real GDP here is intersect and the aggregate expenditure is equal, but the potential GDP is a little bit higher than the real GDP. Therefore, this determines the equilibrium level of the real GDP. When you are going to look to this graph, the total or aggregate expenditure in the economy is expected to equal to the output, but here it is supposed to be equal, but the potential GDP which is expected is a little bit higher. And the consumption as a function of the nation's income, how do consumption expenditures increase as national income rises? People can do two things with their income: either consume, as I said to you, or save. Either they consume their disposable income, or they put some to the banking sector. But of course, the percentage is dependent to the this marginal propensity of consumption and marginal propensity of saving capacity of the people when they are holding in the market their capital, whether it is enough for consuming and also having some capital for saving, is a big question. For the moment, let's ignore the needs to pay taxes with some of it. Then you are assuming no tax here. Then each person who receives an additional dollar faces this choice. The marginal propensity to consume is the share of the additional dollar of income person decides to devote to consumption expenditure. You think about, you are having $1, and with this $1, you may consume 80% to the consumption. You may use for the consuming or purchasing some goods and services, and 20% will be used for saving or to investment. Therefore, the marginal propensity to saving, then the share of the additional dollar of person decides to save, it must also hold true that marginal propensity to save plus marginal propensity to saving must be 1. As I said to you, you have $1, usually 80 or 90% goes to the consumption, and 10% or 20% maximum goes to the saving. But unfortunately, in the emerging economies, in the most of the developing countries, with this minimum wage, people are not able to save. They just only getting always or borrowing always some capital from the bank for maintaining their existence. And this is then the problem of the emerging economies or the developing countries, because they are not able to enlarge and increase their, let's say, GDP and production operation process for having better growth and catch up the developed nations. And they are always, they are not developing, they are so-called undeveloped. They are always maintain their less development or undevelopment in the economy, and this is because of this wages problem, which is not sufficiently given to the people. Consumption equation here again, C plus A plus BY. As I said to you, A is 20, B is 0.9. Here is the marginal propensity represented, B. And this is then, as you see, the marginal propensity is 0.9. And the autonomous consumption is 20. Then again, you are drawing this consumption function in the below given graph. Then this will then, the slope of this curve or so-called line is dependent to this propensity. In the marginal propensity to consume, out of the marginal amount of income earned is 0.9, then the marginal propensity to saving is 0.1. As I said to you, it is either or. If it is 90, then this should be 0.1. The consumption function in the expenditure output model, how does does consumption increase with the level of national income? Then, as I said to you, it is dependent totally to disposable income, which is given to the people, to the employee. And if it is insufficient, this is good for the country as a whole. Pattern of consumption in the table plotted in the last, to calculate consumption, multiply the income level by dividing the delta C over delta Y, which is the propensity 0.8 for the marginal propensity to consume, and add 600 autonomous consumption for the amount that would be consumed even if income was zero. Consumption plus saving must be equal to income. Let's look up the example. The income is 0, then 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Then the consumption is, as it is given here, is the autonomous 600. Then you have the propensity 1,000 multiplied 0.8 is 800, plus the autonomous is 600, then 100, 1,400. Consumption is obtained, but the saving here is, as you see, in the first is negative 600, in the second is negative 400, and in the third you have the $2,000 disposable income. Then you have the propensity 0.8 plus 600, the autonomous consumption will give you the 2,200, sorry. 2,000 minus 2,200 will give you again minus 200, which is again we are not saving. And in the 3,000, when your income is increased to 3,000, now you reach up the zero, so called you are not in the balance, neither nor, no negative, no positive. Then you have again the 4,000. After $4,000, you are starting to save some. As you see, then you have 0.80 plus 600 is autonomous. Then this will give you 200 only to save. Then you have here then 5,000. Then you have 4,600 consumption, because 4,000 is the 0.8 of the consumption, the propensity, and 600 is the autonomous consumption, is altogether 4,600. And you have here again 400 to save. As you see, as much as your income is increased and enlarged, you start to save. And when you are able to save, you are able to borrow and do some businesses. In developed nations, they are getting too high and big monies, but they are also save. And this is the reason they are able to develop, because, yes, please, I'm listening.
Sir,
Yes.
Professor, our classmates Kevin and An, they commented that we cannot join the class. I don't know what's the problem happening to them.
But Kevin is on. I
He
don't
was
know.
no. It has been more than 10 minutes that he is not
He quit.
on. Yeah, he left.
Okay. Let me. He wants. They want to come or what? I don't
Yeah,
see any Kevin here.
they right. They commented over here at the below that we cannot join the class. I don't know why.
Oh. But I add them. I don't know what is the problem with this. They are already. I
Yeah,
don't know
they're
really.
over here at the comment
They
part.
are in the system. I add them. Okay, I know. I know. I know. What can we do? Kevin, I don't see Kevin actually here, but N is also not on. Anyway, we can do nothing. I will go to finish this presentation, and then they will listen later. Then they will attend to the YouTube channel to watch the videos. What can we do, isn't it? This is the only chance that we can offer them. Am
Okay,
I right?
okay.
Because
Yes,
are you able to see the slides?
yes, of
Okay,
course.
then I will go through. Did you understand these presentation? Because I'm going to finish in some slides later. I'm coming here again, as it is given here again, the investment as a function of the national income. Investment decisions are forward based on expected rates of return, precisely because investment decisions depend primarily on perception, about future economic conditions. They do not depend primarily on the level of GDP in the current year. Thus, on a Keynesian cross diagram, the investment function can be drawn as a horizontal line at the fixed level of expenditure, because as I said to you, it is dependent to the saving percentage, saving account. And in the figure given below, investment function where the level of investment is for the sake of concreteness set at the specific level of 500, as it is given. Just a consumption function shows the relationship between the consumption level and the real GDP. And as it is given on the graph here, only the investment is represented with the 500, which is supposed to be the aggregate expenditures percentage given to the saving. And when we are coming to the governmental spending, as you see, this increases and enlarges the consumption function. When you are wishing to draw the consumption function, which is an increasing line, this governmental expenditures, investment, all will be added, or export, these things, or net export will be added to this level, and will then shift this autonomous consumption level to the higher, and which is becoming a little bit upper from the consumption function. And when we are looking to the governmental spending in the Keynesian growth diagram, the government spending appears as a horizontal line again, as it is represented at 1,300. As in the case of investment spending, it was 500, as I mentioned to you. This horizontal line does not mean the government spending is unchanging. Of course, it is dependent on change. And it means only that government spending changes when the government decides on a change in the budget, rather than shifting the disposable income to the upper level. If this the governmental changes shift and increase regarding to the given percentages or given amount, which is enlarged and increased, this governmental spending will also enlarge and increase and shift the consumption function to the upper level. And once again, when we are coming to the example here, it is given the revise the earlier table consumption function, so that it takes tax into account now. And after tax, we have also, as you know, in the economy and in our incomes, always some tax deduction. The first column shows the national income as it is given in the former graph and former table. And the second column calculates the tax, which is the example are set at a rate of 30%, which is very high. And approximately $300 will be reduced from our income, and it makes $700. And it makes for 2,000, 1,400, for 3,000, 2,100, and it goes like this. The fourth column then calculates the consumption in the same manner as I mentioned to you. Multiply after tax income by the 0.8 and adding the propensity to the autonomous consumption. You're going to add this after tax income 700 plus 600, the autonomous tax, which makes one, because this after tax income will be multiplied with 0.8, and this will make I think 560, and then you're going to add 60, then this will make 1,160. And for the second, you have 1,400, you're going to multiply with the 0.80, then this will then give you something, and you add this 600, which is 1,120 plus 600, then it makes 1,720, and then it goes to 2,100. Again, you're going to multiply with 0.8, and this will then makes, again, when you are reducing this 600, it will make, I think, 1,600, I think. And this will then add 618, and this will then add to 600, then it will make 2,280, and it goes like this. And the saving, again, here you're going to subtract this 600 from 600 saving, then the, of course, from the you're going to reduce it from the total amount, 700 minus 1,160, it makes 460, you're gonna after tax income subtract from the consumption, then you will have 300 for the 2100 will be subtracted from the 2280. It is 180, and it goes like this. As you see, after the 5000 you are getting a positive sum saving, and it is as you are observing, the after tax income will be subtracted from the consumption. 3500 will be subtracted from the 3400, and you have now positive sum numbers, which is very important to have higher salaries for being able to save. And here, when tax are included, the marginal propensity to consume is reduced by the amount of the tax rate. So each additional dollar of income results in a smaller increase in consumption than before taxes. For this reason, the consumption function with tax included is flatter than the consumption function with tax, as it is shown here. The consumption after taxes, as you are observing, is a little bit flatter, and consumption before taxes is a little bit more vertical or more higher than this, because as it is mentioned, this tax is reducing the capacity of the aggregate expenditures for the consumer. And here again, we are giving the export and the import impact. The export function is drawn by a horizontal line, as it is given on the left graph, and on the right, it is given the import. The export function is drawn as a horizontal line because exports are determined by the buying power of the other countries. As it is a horizontal line, as you are observing here, because you are not the determinant, because the countries that you are exporting is determined and is the estimator for your export capacity, because if they demand more, then you will export more. Therefore, it is becoming somehow horizontal line to the real GDP, and the aggregate expenditure is not affecting and changing this. We are looking to the import. It is drawn as a negative because import, as you know, you have to pay to buy. Therefore, expenditure on the import of products are subtracted from the expenditures. Therefore, it is reducing the domestic economy. In this example, the marginal propensity to import is 0.1. So imports are calculated by the multiplying the level of the income as minus 0.1. This was the today's lecture. I accelerated a little bit because it was a little bit faster gone. And since you are all not here, then I prefer to present it as much as possible precisely and finish it, and then upload it to the system. Then if you are then wishing to watch and refresh yourself, then you will understand better. Next lecture, I will do the application. We will then start to calculate this aggregate expenditure model of the Keynes, and we will see how it is affecting and changing the economy. If you do have any question, you will ask me. If you don't have any question, then I will finish today's class. Any final, you attended my class. What was the problem that you are not able to attend?
Sir.
I don't understand. What was the problem?
I don't know too.
You are trying to attend, but you are not able.
I was trying to attend, but I didn't.
It shifts you back. Oh, but I included you. I don't know why you are not able to attend. This is interesting. I will ask why it is so, why you are not able to attend, and please contact your colleagues and let me know what's the problem that they are not able to attend. I will upload this video again to the YouTube, so you can watch this video. I will upload the PowerPoints also to the queues. Then you will download and learn these papers, and also I will give you some materials for the PDF format for studying this Keynesian economics. And if you are next week joining, we will have the application. We will calculate these materials. We will calculate these Keynesian models, the expenditure output models, and trying to inform and enlarge this knowledge with some numbers. Then you will understand how it is affecting and changing the economy, these multipliers and these propensities. It is very interesting. I think next week will be very good. I think if you are attending and trying to exercise together. If you don't have any question, then I will finish this class. And as I said to you, I'm going to upload it to the Qs and to the YouTube, to my channel. Then you watch this video. This is necessary to understand the graph and the theoretical part. And then the application next week, you will probably understand better if you are studying and watching these presentations. If you don't have any question, then I appreciate for you attending and joining my class. Next week, we will have, as I said to you, the application, which is very good for you. Do you have any question? No, sir. You don't have, I think, isn't it, Said and Annie? Did you check your results, Annie?
We don't have a.
Did you check your results, Annie? Your results, your exam results?
I think she checked. Yesterday she
checked.
told me.
But
I checked,
Said,
sir.
you didn't, Said. You are happy with your result or you are not happy? It's okay.
I'm not too happy, but I'm happy because I said.
Okay. As I said, I will give you one assignment for upgrading your results. This will be a helping hand for you for increasing and enlarging your, I think, grade. Let's see what we can do. Okay, then. Have a nice weekend. See you next week.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you so much. Take
Bye.
care, you too.
Bye-bye.